That's what I'm talking about. What's going on, everybody? Welcome, Arvanauts, to a Saturday stream. It is August 11th, 2018, about 24 minutes after 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time in the year of our Lord, Anno Domini, etc., etc., etc. It is raining here in New York, but it is not raining in our hearts. Welcome, everyone, to episode 11 of Masters of the Dungeon. We actually have our year anniversary of this show next month, which is really hard to believe, but it's been a lot of fun, and we are looking forward to another awesome discussion for the next couple of hours or so with a special guest. Before I introduce those, though, let me remind everybody about ways to support the stream. If you haven't already done so, please follow this channel. That's the best way. Please, if you haven't already done so, spread the word about the stream in multiple ways. First of all, check out the YouTube channel, !ArvTube. Subscribe over there, and you can check out past broadcasts of this and many other shows that we do on this channel. !ArvCord will get you over to the Discord channel, where you can hang out with the Arvanauts in between streams. That is always a good time as well. !ArvTweets will allow you to get over to my Twitter. Please subscribe to me over there. You can check out what I have to say about this, about gaming, streaming, writing, politics, my family, stuff like that. It's all of me, just be aware. It's all of my public presence anyway over there. That's Arv Tweets. And while we're on the subject of tweeting, please !tweet to retweet this stream so that you can retweet out this awesome show that we're about to present to you. That's a good thing as well. Arv Shop will get you over to my merchandise area, where you can pick up a lot of stuff that we have here, including stuff for Infinity and Beyond. Soon we will be adding Assignment Unpossible and Esper Genesis gear to that section as well, so please do that. !Arvtreon is the Patreon, currently sitting at $393.96, so tantalizingly close to $400. If you haven't already done so, please consider supporting that. You can get inspirations to affect games on this channel. You can get copies of one of my band's first few albums. You can get a copy of an epic poem written for you, or a character background done for you. You can even get critiques of your writing, depending on the tier that you support at, so please consider doing that. That's a big thing for both you and for the channel. And last but certainly not least, that sub button right above the window there, the video window, will allow you to get some of those awesome emotes, and it will also very soon get you your very own awesome custom sub badge, because I'm going to be uploading custom sub badges after the show tonight. We now have them ready to go. I just need to upload them, then Twitch needs to approve them, so I'm hoping that by the time Tuesday rolls around, they will be approved, and we will have them ready to go. So if you want to be a part of that, please join in to that fun times. Last thing I want to mention is just about the schedule. The schedule is now pretty much finalized. We've got Lone Wolf coming up for you on Tuesday evening. We've got Pen and Pixels with Battletech. On Friday, we have got Esper Genesis that'll be coming your way. On Saturday, so a week from tonight, we will have Infinity and Beyond joining us. It's going to be fun times with Curse of Strahd. Then on the following Tuesday, we will have the Patreon supported chat chosen game of the month, so that'll be happening on that Tuesday. And then we'll have D&D with GOG Storm King's Thunder on that, Pen and Pixels. Then we will have on that Friday Assignment Unpossible, that'll be the 24th. And then we will have on the 25th more Infinity and Beyond for your listening and watching pleasure. And then on Tuesday, the following Tuesday, we will have the Patreon chat chosen game of the month, Pen and Pixels with Battletech. And last Friday will be another Esper Genesis. So we got a lot of stuff going on. It's going to be awesome times. And if you just type in !calendar, that will do that as well. Thank you, Trent. I appreciate that. Now, with all that said, though, we have got some awesome stuff going on tonight. After Masters of the Dungeon, we have got Dungeons and Dragons with viewers. So stick around if you want to see some of the cool stuff that we talk about added into the mix. Now, as always, I'm going to unmute myself so the gentlemen know that we are ready to go, and then I'm going to unmute them, which I'm going to do right in
Someone
there.
help.
He's going to be unmuted.
And
finally.
then we're now going to go over there.
Someone help! I'm keeping us trapped here.
It is here.
Can't leave.
It's fine. Silence. I told you never to speak about that in public. What is going on? We are all here. The gang is all here with a special guest. And I'm going to get to introducing him in just a minute. But I will start, as I usually do, with the gentleman who's right below me. Certainly not in my heart. He's always, of course, top of my heart. But he is right below me physically on the screen. And that is, of course, our good friend Dave, the Digital Dungeon Master, who is in the midst of beginning to create his studio empire in El Paso. So that'll be a good time. How you doing, Dave? How's life? How's the universe? Have you built in so far your your plush sofas that you need in the front of every studio, and like hung up all the gold records and stuff that you're going to be like all the Emmys,
Yeah, I wish. No, actually, I'm in the process of moving still. I've got probably about 70% done. But of course, taking the computer stuff down will be the last thing to do because I've got things going on every day. But that'll be also the first thing to go up in the new place as well. And then probably around the end of September, beginning of October, I'm going to start building the new studio and building a panel and all kinds of stuff. And we'll be doing live games there. So looking forward to it.
That's going to be good times. I really want to see what that looks like. It's going to be super cool.
So do I, Arv. So do I.
And it's like I can't wait, and that will be a time in the future that is not quite this time. But I look forward to seeing when it happens. Unfortunately, Dave did not join us he could not join us at the Power of Gen Con. So
No, I'm hoping to be there next year. But I'll be at El Paso Con this year. So that's actually a pretty big con. I was shocked when I went in April this year. It was massive.
Nice. I don't know a lot about that. Is that just like general tabletop like game stuff, or what is it?
It's everything. I mean, it is everything. I mean, it's like a massive, convention center with all kinds of games going on. No matter if it's X-Wing, if it's there was a couple of people playing some Gloomhaven, there were D&D games, Pathfinder games. There's all kinds of stuff going on.
Nice. Well, that's awesome, man. Yeah, cool.
Plus, there was all the Next Generation crew was there signing autographs, and you can meet them and all kinds of cosplayers. Nice. A huge convention hall that had, the Ghostbusters car, and it had the Punisher truck. It had the A-Team van. It had everything. It was awesome.
Wow, it is amazing how like the con scene has just become so huge, like not just in the sort of game area, but just in a lot of these different places. Yeah. So that's pretty awesome. I was talking to one guy on the way back from Gen Con who was kind of like, "Oh yeah, my buddies were at that." He's like, I don't usually get into that. I'm more an anime guy." And then he like rattles off like 6 huge anime cons that he goes to, and I'm just like, wow, it's like that is a whole other. Oh no, hey, listen, it's anime. Anime is perfectly reasonable as a thing. No, but but he
awesome. It's my favorite.
He was really, it was funny though. He was going off on it. So cons have become a big thing, but it is a pleasure to have you with us as always, Dave. I look forward to hearing your contributions over the next time that we're with each other. But first, we're going to move on to Askren, who I did in fact meet face to face for the first time. We met in person in the exhibit hall. I can confirm he is real. He is a real person.
I apologize for that. It is a stain you will never wash off.
Yeah, it was good to be able to see you. So how are you, man? How was your Gen Con? How was the good times?
No, Gen Con is always a fun experience. This last year was kind of super spontaneous, but a lot about business and stuff. This year was I took a bunch of meetings, but it was mostly about just trying to make sure I spent a little bit of time with all of the people that I knew there, because there was just so many people from the streaming scene and stuff at this Gen Con. It was kind of ridiculous. And so finding time to hang out with everyone and, also because I wasn't DMing this year, I was pressed. So that meant I got time to playtest a lot more games than I usually, which was a lot of fun. I had a good time doing that. Also got some cool bonuses. I got some signed stuff, some pictures with some cool people, some really cool comics. So it's just the touristy stuff.
Yep. No, that's awesome, man. I'm actually looking forward to hearing maybe some of that coming up in our product review. You might talk a little bit some things.
Go get the books. They're somewhere around here.
Yeah, that's cool though. It was, and I agree.
And of course, it was great to getting a chance to say hi. We only caught up for like a minute because he was in the middle of signing, and I didn't want to like hog his time there. And we had places to be, but super fun to say hi to everyone. Check out the panels that all these awesome people did, and just hang out, have drinks, all that good stuff.
Yep, totally agree. And it was true. It felt like the entire tabletop community was there. I didn't get a chance to see a whole bunch. I ran into Speedy, Not So Speed Runs, actually, while I was doing an IRL stream, was like, hey, like behind me. I'm like, what? And I turn around and he's there. And I saw some other folks, but I was so busy with symposium stuff. I was hanging out with writers a lot too, but it was great. I was glad we got a chance to see each other, and I am looking forward to hearing more from you today as usual. And another person person who was at Gen Con, and our special, and who had lots of conversations that were totally, all conversations he wanted to be a part of in every single case. And that, of course, is our special guest for today, tabletop icon, Grant Ellis. How you doing, Grant? How are you? Thank you for being on. And first of all, how was your Gen Con? And secondly, for those who don't know you as well on this channel, give us a little rundown about who you are. Why are you this icon that I just named?
All right. Hi, everybody. My name's Grant Ellis. I'm an independent content creator for tabletop role-playing games. I'm a writer for 2C Gaming. I'm sponsored by Money Cook Games. I'm part of their Sunday show, The Owl of Lycia, DM'd by Marcy Villan, which is a great show. Check it out. I am on 9 different Twitch channels, 7 days a week. I do a total of 44 hours of streaming a week on top of my 60-hour-a-week job as a COO of 2 different Manhattan-based companies. My Gen Con was extraordinary. I ran 27 hours of D&D for Kobold Press. Got to meet a lot of friends from the online Twitch and Twitter community that I hadn't met in Meet Space before. Got to hang out with a lot of friends over the whole course of the week. I got into town several days early so I could kind of almost pre-game Gen Con.
Mm-hmm.
For PAX Unplugged, we're going to try to get in town 3 days before the con and just play Curse of Strahd level 1 to finish.
I'm 100% going to be in town early for Unplugged. I need
24-hour sessions and just be like, let's see how this sounds.
Dude, I'll DM for 24 hours. I don't give a fuck.
24-hour session. Actually, that to say, that just reminded me. I don't know if they've closed submission. Have they closed panel submissions for PAX Unplugged yet?
No, not yet.
Because
probably not.
I just wondered about whether I submitted. I think I've submitted. I submitted to a couple different places, and I don't remember. I think I submitted 1 or 2 panels there. I should submit one for doing this very show live. I should just submit one for a panel live. I didn't think about that. I will make a note to myself. Sorry, Grant.
I have not made any panels. I would love to be. I'm completely open if anyone wants a speaker or a bullshitter, I guess.
Panel. I will. I'll check that out. But anyway, yeah. Sorry, Grant. I just wanted that was a good note. I wanted to.
And over the past 3 years, I've run D&D and other tabletop RPGs for over 630 people. Everyone from Matthew Mercer to Bruce Cordell, who's a pretty prolific designer and content creator. To people who it's been their very first session of D&D. And I've run for a lot of people online, offline, and you can catch me at conventions all around the country.
Yeah, that is like I said, the hardest working man in show business. It's real impressive. And yeah, I am looking forward to hearing what you have to say over the next couple hours. And in fact, I'm going to start with you because what we usually do here is we usually talk a little bit about what's going on in our regular campaigns that we run, things that happened and or adventures recently that happened in one of those campaigns. And so I will throw that over to you since you have so much to choose from. Is there a particular thing that happened, Grant, that you want to highlight that you were like, that is the coolest thing? I can't believe that happened. It was so awesome as of late that you could bring up.
I think there would be 2 things.
Okay.
The first is hidden information in a game session.
Okay.
I redesigned one of the Kobold Press encounters. I thought it'd be cooler to make the Goblin Outpost a little more like an outpost. And I had visible, unhidden information just that the players could see. There's a group of goblins beneath this kind of treehouse structure. Then I had another group of goblins. I had another group of
goblins.
Yeah, there was another group of goblins inside the treehouse structure that were kind of pelting the party with arrows. There were dust goblins from Kobold Press's Tome of Beasts. So players, each time they got hit, would have to make a wisdom saving throw or become frightened. But I made sure that there were powerful magic users in the party. And eventually they just got so agitated with the goblins in the treehouse. Let's cast Fireball at it. Explodes. All the goblins die. They only have 5 hit points. But they forgot, because I kept agitating them, that the whole reason they were going there was to rescue a group of pilgrims who were captured in the treehouse. So they incinerated everyone they were supposed to rescue.
Nice.
All because they got agitated of just taking a little bit of damage every round. It was kind of a nuisance. They didn't like making saving throws. And they're like, you know what? I had the big kaboom. So what I realized is sometimes using hidden information like that can totally change the balance of a campaign and an adventure, because it's like, oh great, we simply killed everyone we were attempting to rescue. we're gonna have to live out the rest of our days on the land and just never go home.
Just by poking them continually in the ribs, like poke
Yep.
every turn.
A little bit of damage. They were higher level characters, just a little bit of damage, and they're like, you know what? We're just gonna fireball that structure. Then they're like, oh gosh. Out of 6 parties that ran that adventure, half of them blew up the pilgrims, and I call that a balanced encounter, one way or another.
Balance in that 3 of them they all die and 3 of them they don't. Is that's
Yes.
the balance? I gotcha. That's funny. All right, so that was one. What was the other?
The second thing is party turnover.
Okay.
I run a show on the Greyhawk channel. It's the Queen of Spiders campaign, module GDQ 1 through 7, essentially against the Giants, the Drow, and then Queen of the Demon Web Pits. And I've set it up that we do 3-episode seasons, very short seasons, so we have an opportunity to transition from module to module, because they're short modules. Some of them are 15 pages long, and they're just a dungeon delve. When I say just a dungeon delve, they are micro dungeons by today's standards. But I've set it up since I wanted to play with lots of people, and lots of people wanted to play, that each season we would have some party turnover, and just integrating new player types, players that have come from previous editions of D&D, players from different backgrounds, and just kind of watching that integrate. So we've just started our 3rd season of that, and I brought in 2 players. They are 2 women that are pushing 50 years old. They started in 1st edition. They grew up playing in Greyhawk, and some of their players have only other members of the party have only been playing for 3 months. But it's really interesting to just watch how quickly the group comes together, adapt to each other's role-playing styles, and how you can integrate new characters into a story pretty quickly.
Wow. Yeah, that's neat. And it is sort of a measure. It is funny that this has come so far, that we've gotten to the point where people are able to, all these people who have different editions that they happen to love, and then all the conversions for 5th edition from those 1st editions ones. In fact, I'm going to talk about one of those products that I picked up from Goodman Games at Gen Con. Yeah, it's interesting that we got a chance to do it, and it is across age groups and demographics and generations, which is one of the many, many amazing things about this game that we love. So that's awesome. I dig it. It's good stuff. Ashgrim, what do you got? Something that has happened as of late in one of your campaigns. You're muted.
Pro streamer.
So yeah, I do this for a living. So the one thing that I think is going to be fun, I can't say whether it has worked out yet, but I spent a whole bunch of time getting ready for, and like we landed last session in Razor Coast, which happened last night, on the party entering into their first sort of naval combat.
Ooh.
And it's going to be really fun, really interesting. I'm sort of up converting from Pathfinder, from a Pathfinder third party, a type of naval combat that breaks it into a really sort of really verbose system with a lot of complexity that actually functions very simply when you kind of get into it. It involves them sort of choosing naval actions, things that they can do, moving around zones on the boat. It's going to be fun. We haven't got in there, but I was setting up the thing, and I'm hoping it's going to be a blast. I'll have something cool to report about that. But last month I talked about this really cool dramatic moment that happened in my Crimson Throne game, my home game, where a player kind of faced off against sort of the lieutenant of the big bad queen, and had to make a choice between essentially fighting an unwinnable battle or walking away while this person was saying, okay, your loved one that we might have in custody, we're just going to execute, right?
Okay.
We talked, it was a really dramatic kind of end of the session moment. That group has kept going, and what happened the last time we played and leading into this time was probably one of the funniest things that I've seen happen in a D&D game, because there was a hero in that city named Blackjack. He was essentially the Batman of the city, the hero of the people.
Okay.
But he ended up getting captured by one of the sort of these noble lords. And so there was no Blackjack. So when the players found the house of their friend Vencarlo, they learned Vencarlo was Blackjack. They took his gear, and one of the players has essentially been playing the role of Blackjack ever since, because blackjack isn't just one person. Lots of people have had this mantle over time.
Right, I was just gonna say he's an idea, really.
Right, yes. But the party was out of the city for months. They got teleported into the desert and they had to make their way back. So they've just recently returned, but they've been out of the city for months. And the city has kind of descended into this military kind of military law and order, iron grip of the queen. And they learned that among that, a new hero of the people has been trying to establish themselves, one that supports the queen and essentially has been going around fighting the rebels, the people that the players are working with. So they go and seek out this hero, and they have to crack some heads of these fake rebels to that he's been beating up, to make people think that the rebellion is bad. And when they finally locate the this rebel gathering where it's kind of like an ambush, all these people are gathered there, and there's this person in blackjack gear, and these citizens are essentially saying, like, they're yelling insults at the party. They're saying, like, you're not heroes, like, blah 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 blah. And the party, party's all of a sudden making saves, will saves and fortitude saves and stuff. And one person asks one of the players, well, where were you, when we needed blackjack? And the player said, well, I was in an Arcona dungeon. Arcona is the noble family.
Okay.
And the person said, well, I wish you'd just go back there. And then I asked him to make a will save, and he failed. And the player in the blackjack gear is gone. And a second later, he finds himself back in this dungeon where they were 3 books ago. And because what they don't know is just hidden off screen, this vigilante, this hero was there granting wishes because he's actually in Afridi in disguise. So he has the wish ability, and he just grants the wishes of people, and that includes just teleporting someone away. And now that he doesn't know where he is, and the party has no idea where he went, and they have to fight this dude, and they're down a person, and they have no way of teleporting to him because the only wizard in the party that can teleport hasn't seen the dungeon where he is now, so there's no way for them to get him. It was a really, really funny moment. I loved it.
Nice. Right. This is when shenanigans actually happen that were not intended. Yeah, that's good. That's good. It's whenever you hear in a D&D campaign wish or anything involving the word wish or surrounding the word wish, you should be like,
the word
don't
think of many things too.
Oh,
The thing about it is, it was intended. That was that was the point. The point was to get those people saying shit to the party so that the
you intended it.
But
100%. I know you did, but no, I get that. I'm just talking about if you're a player. This is a word to the wise. It's
I'm a lawyer. Someone says the word wish. We need legal counsel present.
Well, actually, somebody sent along to me. I just want to look this up really quickly. Somebody sent along to me on Twitter. They tagged me with this cartoon. I don't know if you guys had seen it. That had, here we go. Yeah, he said, there we go. It's this cartoon, and I'll see if I can actually find a link to it. And it basically alarming DM phrases part 2. So they have things like, yeah, you can certainly try, or just curious, where are you keeping your coins? Or so you touch it, or this room apparently seems empty. So this is just a reminder that phrases matter, and you got to be careful about the phrases that you say. And that if a DM says a phrase, you've got to be careful about that too. So you just
as far as you're aware is my phrase.
As far as you're right.
Yeah. Players, they want to search a room. You roll a perception check. There's no traps as far as you're aware.
Yeah, exactly. Seems fine to you. Yeah, good stuff, man. So Dave, what about you? Anything of the astonishing new variety that happened in a campaign of late?
Yeah, actually, I really can't talk about it, but I can talk about my Savage Worlds 50 Fathoms campaign. That's going really well.
Okay.
Actually, the party, they're actually really getting through this content pretty well. I don't know if you've ever read 50 Fathoms, but they're already through the first major part of the storyline where they meet Tressa the Red. And I actually incorporated a bunch of stuff because we basically we wanted to take a break from D&D 5e. I mean, we've all been playing D&D 5e for a long time, so that's why the transition. And plus, I needed to do that well because I've been running multiple games a week for 5 solid years back to D&D Next. So we had our Tomb of Annihilation game. And of course, you got the death curse. Everybody's going to be dying here in the near future. You need to find the soulmonger. Well, I basically kind of threw everything out of whack. And one of the NPCs that used to be in our game, Markish, he just couldn't play anymore. So I made him the main villain. And one of my players, he's infatuated with the spoons and stuff and spooning the world and, having his bucket men playing spoons on stage and stuff as a bard / cleric.
Okay.
So one of his spoons, which was, he named Mr. Spoony, he disappeared. Well, Markish had stolen him. And now Captain Markish and Mr. Spoony are the cause of this death curse. And, they were he's basically AKA the soulmonger. So we took all of that and put it into Charybdis, which is the world of 50 Fathoms. So they met Teresa the Red, and they found out that the amulet that one of my mage has, 010, by the way, he has the amulet from Vorn. He controls Vorn, but we didn't bring Vorn into 50 Fathoms. So I went ahead, and Teresa had this vision, and she saw the amulet on him and said, "Oh, you're going to be the key to all of this, and you need to keep that amulet close to you." So, I've incorporated 5e Tomb of Annihilation into 50 Fathoms. They're already on their way to the open world, sailing the high seas. We're going to have some ship combat. We're going to do a lot of fun stuff in Savage Worlds. They had their first dramatic task, which Captain Shin just nailed it. Had aces on every roll just about, and no club cards drawn, so there was no complications. It just went too perfect. But anyways, that game's going good, and we finished up Lost Mine at Phandelver about 3 weeks or so ago now, and we started playing the new Starfinder AP, which is the Against the Aeon Throne, which I can't talk about because it's really not even released yet, but we did pre-record it, and we'll release it when the time comes, as when all of the subscriptions for Starfinder AP is sent out, and we'll get those videos up there. But that game went really well. The players did really well in role playing and all that other stuff. But I really can't talk about it.
Nice.
Unfortunately.
Still, though, I like this. I like the idea of the secret knowledge of adventures to come. That's cool.
Yeah.
I am going to bring up 2 very quickly. One of them was my Adventures in Middle Earth campaign that runs twice a month. They just finished Those Who Tarry No Longer, which is about the midway point, a little bit beyond halfway now through Wilderland Adventures. I've been raving about how good this system is, and Cubicle 7 in general. Just everything they do is good. Like every system they make works. Every system is smart. And this was no exception to that. And the party was.
Are we talking about Middle Earth this time? Or?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah. I know. I can't help it, man. I can't help it. But they were amazing. So I wanted to highlight it because they've just been very, very into the sort of darkness of this sort of setting, because they were in the dungeons underneath Dol Guldur and blah, 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 blah. And they had this sort of spontaneous role-playing moment where they all gathered together in this sort of shadowy, flooded cell where it is just dark, despairing. They've all got a ton of shadow points. Everything is, and this is all within a dream that this is happening. And they just wanted to talk about a positive memory. So each one of them talks about a positive memory from their family or from their times before, and they're all coming up with these things, and it was great. And then when the actual the sort of big bad of this shows up, this spirit that has cast them into this dream shows up and basically demands that they despair, they're sort of holding out against him, holding on to these memories. It was pretty awesome. They did a really good job with it. And Amal, who's one of my authors who plays in that campaign, when they had gotten down into this dungeon and been a pretty depressing session, so she tweeted afterwards, she's like, "My God, I'm going for emergency sushi, all the feels, blah, blah, blah." So this time she was like, also went for sushi, but this was not emergency, but celebratory, escaped the dream, got back into it was badass. they did a really good job. So I was really happy with that campaign. Other one I mention quickly is at Gen Con I ran the second adventure, the sequel to last year's, called Return to the Forbidden Library, which I ran for a set of authors that I did as members of the symposium. They did an amazing job with it. I think the audience that's there had a lot of fun watching that as well. And it was really enjoyable to me to see them kind of invest, even though it had been a year since the last time they had used these characters, using them again, sort of slipping right back into them like a comfortable jacket or something. That they just did a really good job with that as well. And the thing that I wanted to highlight was this. I don't know, you guys may or may not agree with me on this, but I always feel like the dice, it's amazing how many times the dice fit the narrative perfectly. Like, of course, so-and-so critically fails or critically hits or whatever the case may be. And we had a character who had killed one of the other characters as a healing cleric by throwing her axe instead of actually healing last year. So that person has never let her forget it.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. It was just like, so everyone was joking about, are you going to heal them with the blunt part of the axe this year? So we were talking about that. And here again, they're in this place, they're going into a fight. And she's like, okay, I'm on the other side of the arena. This should be fine. I'm going to actually use my axe. And the person is like, and they had been the whole adventure. They're like, I'm behind them. I'm 20 feet behind them into the side. I hide behind a pillar, the whole 9 yards. But because of the way that the person had maneuvered themselves and had told me, okay, I want to be behind them when I attack, they maneuvered themselves to where they were pretty close to this person again. Throw the axe, critical fail. I had to. Like, it was a softball at that point. Critical fail, axe hits the person in the back. They don't get killed this time because they're a little bit higher level. And again, the cleric is like, I take the other axe and attack instead of healing the person they just hit. It was hilarious, and they loved it. And the person was just like, I think in real life you just like me. I think that's why this continues to happen. Anyway, it was a funny moment. I dig it. And it was these folks did a great job. So it was really good to see them all sort of connected with each other again. So that was good stuff. So, all right, I want to talk a little bit here. I wanted to bring up the subject of the day for us to talk a little bit about different game systems. And I've been thinking about this quite a bit. And actually, I see that Eric is in chat. So Eric Vulgaris would be able to comment about this at length because he knows roughly 750 systems, I believe. So what I want to ask about is, number one, do you have a tendency, all of us, do we have a tendency to focus on one or two systems, or are we sort of like whatever's clever, like the most possible systems we can do? And if it's the latter, if we do a ton of systems, how do we keep them straight in our heads? How do we keep the rules consistent? How do we keep it where things don't automatically bleed into the other and we're like, oh, wait, crap. I mean, if we want to do that intentionally, that's fine. But I can imagine having moments where you guys that run 15 systems at a time, it would be hard for me to be able to keep all those rules straight in my head if I'm doing them back to back. So how do you do all of that? And that's for anybody who wants to start. Grant, maybe we could start with you, I guess.
Sure.
How do you do it?
So here's really where I start. I probably have my strongest roots in being an improviser, meaning I'm a trained performer who performs improvised scenes, who worked in motion pictures and television, who worked in stand-up comedy, who worked in pro wrestling, and all these things require a certain degree of improvisation. And the heart of improv is to learn as many games as possible and then situationally introduce a game to find a resolution to a situation.
Okay.
Good example is Dungeons and Dragons has almost no aid in solving intra-party conflict, player versus player. If the players are having a debate over who gets to have whose way, how do you determine that? Really, it'll just come down to who mentally, outside of the game, in the metagame, gets more exhausted and gives up, or maybe the dungeon master makes a decision. But there's other games such as Polaris by Ben Lehman, or The King is Dead by Vincent Meg Baker, which introduce conflict resolution systems. Another good one is Dying Earth by Robin Laws, which introduces conflict resolution systems so two players can come to a resolution in character as part of the game. And this goes through combat, through discovery, exploration, dungeon delving. So what I try to do is learn as many systems as possible for what I need for the story that I'm going to tell. Some systems do this extremely well, such as Cypher system, where it's just sort of you have a very simple resolution mechanic that can be applied to a lot of different things. But I like to look at a variety of systems for the type of story that's going to be told, which is generally based around the type of game the players want to play. In Eric's in chat, we were playing a game. It started as a Dungeons and Dragons game, but it very quickly, over about 3 episodes, became something completely different. The players didn't want to play D&D. They wanted to have party drama because that is where they were getting their enjoyment, and they needed a system to help facilitate the story of the relationship between party members as they explore a strange and dangerous world. So there's other games that do that sort of game much better than D&D. So we slowly, over time, got away from 5th edition and started introducing conflict resolution mechanics from other systems, to the point where when the next season launches on Twitch, we'll just use a completely different game system.
Wow.
But it took starting in D&D. So with me, I'm I read a lot of systems. Not everyone does that, though. If you're what I'll call a single system person, and as you get older, especially as I've gotten older, it's been harder and harder to remember or memorize what I'll call complex systems. An example would be Pathfinder or D&D 5th edition. They are more complicated than Vagabonds of Defud, which is powered by the Apocalypse. You really can only keep one in your head at a time before your brain capacity is filled up completely.
Right.
So what you need to do is you need sign-on from your players that this is the type of game we're going to play. This is a game about pushing lead and killing monsters. You are going to find lots of loot, and stratification is determined through story-based milestones, whether it's negotiating with a fire giant duke or killing him. The resolution of that scene will give you a certain amount of experience points or a sum total needed to stratify to the next tier or level. And I need you to buy into this game in order for you to get the most enjoyment out of it. Likewise, even with a more narrative-based system, I'd let people know this is a game about challenging the other players by playing as the antagonist in their story. And you will prevent them boldly from achieving their desires by adding a consequence to every one of their actions. This is the game we're going to play. We need everyone to buy in. I think when you play with maybe more experienced gamers, or rather those that are familiar with more systems, be it, here's a really good example. D&D 5th edition, Blades in the Dark, and I'll say Dungeon World have a variety of mechanics that you can mash up into a very smooth and graceful fantasy exploration / combat game real easily, just by surgically combining several mechanics from each. That's great if you have people that are familiar with those systems and can embrace it. However, you might have someone where that is completely foreign to, and they say, look, it's got to be rules as written and rules as intended, because I don't have the energy to learn a different way. Or
Right.
I'm running an Adventures League and I need this to be standardized so that there's a consistent style of play. So, yeah, that's kind of a long, dirty rant about it, but those are kind of my approaches where I run a lot of different systems. My background as an improviser lets me take bits and pieces from various game systems and apply them as needed. However, that type of play experience is completely inappropriate in an organized play setting such as Adventures League or Pathfinders Society. And you need to use your judgment when you introduce that style of play.
That's interesting. And actually, I want to mention Turbo Tango, who's my friend Mike Underwood, an author, is also my co-host on Speculate. We've been talking quite a bit about this for reasons we can't quite talk about, but hopefully soon. But yeah, the idea of sort of hacking, D&D, sort of not exactly homebrewing it, but adding in things like the conflict resolution mechanic is interesting. And I know that I'm pretty sure I've seen Eric playing The King is Dead, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure I've seen him play that system before. All right, what do you gentlemen think about the different systems? Dave, what about you with the Savage Worlds? Because you've been talking about that moving away from 5e for a little bit because of a break. So how do you handle this with different systems?
Well, actually, I was one of those DMs. Grant mentioned some people will just want to run one rule set, and I had that upside down Victorian lampshade on for many years. I mean, I started playing back in 1984, and when I started streaming 5 years ago, I was still in that mentality to where if it didn't say Dungeons and Dragons or Wizards of the Coast or TSR, it sucked. And I'm sorry, but that's just the way a lot of people think. And, that a lot of people will only play Dungeons and Dragons. And, I've been enlightened since then. And now I think there are many games out there that are just as good, if not better, than Dungeons and Dragons. And, but that's for a whole nother show that'll cause all kinds of uprise for saying, I think this game's better or this edition. And so, but, I was in that mindset, and now I've expanded. The first other game that I started playing was the Green Ronin product, Dragon Age. That was a great, D6 system. That was as an adult, that was the first time that I ever stepped out of my comfort zone and started playing another game. And I had a blast with it. Then we went on to, I love 13th Age. I love Savage Worlds. There's, all the settings within Savage Worlds, Deadlands. You got Savage Rifts now. You've got, if you want to get weird and play with vampires and zombies and werewolves in a World War II setting, you can play Weird Wars 2. I mean, there's so much stuff out there. I've gotten into the Fantasy Flight Star Wars. I am really getting into Pathfinder 2 because I wasn't a big 3.5 and Pathfinder fan. So, and to go and to kind of touch about, I've predominantly ran 5e, but 5e is so rules light. And like Grant had mentioned, you can just cut and paste from other games that you are familiar with and kind of incorporate those into the game. So there's not a lot on, chases in 5e. There's not a lot of stuff on combat, underwater combat. I mean, it's just very basic one paragraph stuff in either the player's handbook or, in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Mm-hmm. But you can take these other games like Savage Worlds, you can implement their chase system in there, or, you can implement something with Starship Combat, or if you're doing anything modern day, or even if you want to take like the Star Wars Fantasy Flight, you can take their dice and incorporate advantages and disadvantages into 5e, which they're already there, but then you can kind of go into like a Shadow of the Demon Lord and have individual dice, and so there's all kinds of stuff that you can do to kind of cater the game the way you want it to run. Because let's face it, D&D is pretty rule light, and if you want to do some things that aren't in modules, or even if they are in the prefabricated modules, you can incorporate these different things into 5e. And I'm sorry if it kind of sounds like I'm going in a circle, but that's just the way to do it, though. And the more rule sets that by the way, the more diverse that you'll be on incorporating other things, because you'll say, oh, I remember this from Dungeon World, or I remember this from 13th Age, or I remember this from Starfinder. Let's incorporate the awesome Starship Combat into 5e, which is very easily doable. You just gotta kind of contort the rules a little bit to fit a more rule light setting, but hey. But I like to do that from time to time. I like to hide it to where, but I won't say anything to the players. I'll just kind of do everything on the roll or right off the cuff and just kind of go with the flow.
Yeah, because a lot of times they won't even, they won't necessarily be aware of it. Yeah. And, so.
Yeah. A lot of the players that I have, they're not now, but my players now, of course, we are playing Savage Worlds, we're playing 5e. But a lot of the players that I've had in the past, if I would have said, "Oh, we're going to incorporate," they would have said, "Oh no, hell no! I'm not. If it doesn't say D&D, I'm not playing that, Dave." I just incorporate stuff now. I just go with the flow.
Yeah.
The less I say, the better. I mean, seriously, as a dungeon master, you have these ideas, and you're like, "Hey guys, what do you think about this?"
Yeah, and I'll
I
talk
don't do
more.
that anymore.
I'm going to talk more about that. That's interesting. I want to talk more about that in a second about tweaking and adjusting. But Askren, first, what do you think? Different systems that you do.
I don't. So it's kind of a strange thing. Mostly because I don't tend to seek out new systems to consume and then run.
Okay.
And that's because I'm crucially aware of how limited the space in the free space in my hard drive is for new systems. Right. I don't have. I have to delete something in order to install more games on there. But like you mentioned, I have forgotten more about Pathfinder than I've probably learned about most, like at least 3 other systems that I play today combined. And I still manage, but so for example, like I've played Cthulhu. I don't know how to play Cthulhu. I didn't know how going in, and I don't know how coming out.
Everybody dies. It's a really simple system. Everyone goes mad. Everyone dies.
Right, but it's one of those things where like I couldn't tell you what I rolled when we played. I couldn't tell you why I rolled it. It's just one of those things where I don't necessarily, for me as a player, I don't necessarily need to know the system inside and out to engage with the story.
Yep.
Right, because in a lot of cases, I think the dice mechanics that we hang on the stories we tell are almost secondary a lot of times. There are some times when they're primary, but I think Grant definitely had a good point. Like, I could never learn another Pathfinder, right? It's why I will probably never dungeon master a game like Shadowrun. There's not enough space in my head, and I will never be confident enough in my ability to run it, to know the system to run it. If I do intend to play it, I'm probably going to find someone who has been running it since forever, and that's their shit. But just, I can still make do with Pathfinder, but I would much rather learn and play smaller systems, systems with less sort of complexity to them. Apocalypse games, games like Mouse Guard, even smaller ones. Open Legend was fine because we just stripped out a lot of the sort of the mechanics and just played with the dice. As I get kind of more and more into running games, I find myself caring more about the story and less about the system as a pure sort of thing to be preserved, right? I am currently trying to figure out, and probably going to consult someone on it, a way to cut out bits of things like Blades in the Dark and put them in my D&D game so I can make a game that feels a little bit like both,
Yep.
Because I think we're realizing now, like, and what Dave was talking to this, there are people who grew up in the age when D&D was the only thing, right? They see RPGs, they see games, especially Dungeons and Dragons, as like this pure monolith that, is not to be spoiled. And I think a lot of us who are sort of developing a more modern mindset on this, and not just us, but a lot of people who are coming up exposed to so many different games that you can try and run, just out of the box, just super easily. They're going to start seeing systems not as these sort of purebred monoliths that have to be preserved, but rather, no, this system has a really cool idea, and this system has a really cool idea, and maybe if I put them together, it'll be a really cool idea, and it's like. And I think we should be open to the mechanics and the systems that do things we like and serve the stories we want to tell. And if a system has parts of it that don't serve what you're trying to do or the fun that you're trying to have, there is no shame in forgetting them or throwing them out or replacing them.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that. I think that story, I have always kind of believed that story over system has kind of been my interest, because I live my life in narrative and story all the time, so it's something which has really kind of become important to me. And what I like are systems that I don't have to fight to do what I want. Like, I could technically hack into anything, right?
Yeah.
But one of the reasons, and I know Dave and I disagree slightly on this point, but one of the reasons that I didn't care for 4E over time is that I felt like I was always having to fight against the system to get it to do what I wanted. And yes, you can do anything with anything. I know. I know.
Right.
No, it's wrong. No, I can get any system to do anything I want, but what I want is a system that kind of enhances it. One of the reasons that I like 5E actually is because I think 5E has been the best of the editions, and I've played all of them, that at getting people to be able to focus on what it is they found most enjoyable. And the reality is that for most people that I know, it was the experience of being lost within that story. Now, how they defined story, whether that was they got a bunch of loot and leveled up and became super powerful, or whether it was they were, in the back rooms, smoky-filled rooms deciding who was going to be the next king, that level of political intrigue, that differs, obviously, but I like the concept in general terms of story over something else. And like, I don't know. I grew up, with D&D myself, so it wasn't until, and I started doing this and, basically started playing it in 1984, Redbox 85, 86. And so that was one of the few things that existed, although there was GURPS and stuff like that, but it was still very sort of small.
Excuse me.
And yeah, it was small, and GURPS had its own problems, that were sort of associated with it. But as time has gone on, and I started checking out things like Wilderness of Mirrors, which I've been using for Simon Impossible, which I think is a brilliant system by John Wick. The Covert Ops that I played with D&D with viewers a few months ago, which is a really interesting system as well. Cosmic Patrol. I have done a little bit of Shadowrun, although I have no interest in GMing it, but I've played a little bit in it. And then I have to say too, the OGL has provided a lot of this as well. Like the Adventures of Middle-earth, although it uses the base of the 5e system, has a lot of things that distinguish it and makes it feel very different. The fellowship rules, the journey rules, the corruption rules, these are all things that substantially alter the fact that it's a low magic world to begin with, substantially alter the feel of 5e. And the same thing is true for Esper Genesis. Esper Genesis is I think is going to be the definitive space game in a couple of years, because I think it's that well made. But it feels very different. It feels like you're playing Mass Effect and Phantasy Star, and the starship combat system that they came up with is vastly different from anything that D&D does, just sort of vanilla D&D, does. So even systems that use technically 5e rules can be very differently constructed and formed. And to me, it is about fundamentally the story and how the story plays out. So yeah,
there was a thing that you mentioned. It was I just wanted to elaborate on that a little bit, in the sense that you said that the system, like, you want your goal is to find a system that does essentially what you want it to do, right?
Or that I can modify to do what I want without having to fight it, though. Yeah.
Right. It's the system feels like it is supporting the experience that you're trying to create.
Yep.
And I think the important caveat to that is that it's not a simple thing to find that, right?
Oh no, that's true.
because you, like, we all as creators, we all imagine what our campaign, what the experience of this story is going to be, and finding the system that supports the way that you like to have fun, or the way that your players engage with sort of the narrative or the mechanics, is not it's not something you might get lucky enough and get it right the first time, but I think experimenting and sort of testing things out and not being afraid to kind of pick and choose is sort of the best way to find those ideas. Also, on the D&D thing, a lot of people say that 5th edition is like the perfect iteration of D&D, and I don't really understand that, because I don't know if you have. We'll talk about this later. I got a chance to play the Pathfinder playtest, and I think it is showing that there is quite a large opening to iterate on things that 5e did well, or sort of ideas that it put forth.
I agree with that totally. I mean, I haven't had a chance to play the Pathfinder 2 2.0 yet, but no, I totally agree with that. I think what I wouldn't say perfect iteration, but it feels to me, I don't want to bring in computer operating systems to this, but the new model for things like, for example, Windows 10, is that they don't want to do Windows 11, 12, 15, 35. What they want to do now is have Windows 10, but have these massive updates that they can, substantially alter, affect, and adjust the system that's in place. And it feels to me like that's a little bit what D&D 5e is trying to do, where I mean, yes, will they have a 6th edition? Probably. But I don't know that they're going to be making enormous changes to the sort of foundation of what that system is. So I think there will absolutely be iterations, and there are things that are going to work outside of it. And, it's a D20 system, and there's going to be, people that don't dig that or don't want that all the time or want to move in other areas. But I do think that 5th edition has managed to create a foundation, and originally it was conceived of as being modular, where you could kind of bolt on different aspects, combat systems and things like that. And so that kind of made a difference, I think, in terms of how the Ultimate system was received. But no, I don't think there's anything perfect. By the way, let me just say, it is always good news that you have different games out there pushing each other. Like, I think it is good news that Paizo, I think, is in a position where it had to do Pathfinder 2.0 because I think WotC D&D 5e pushed it a lot. I think it knows that it needs to come up with something new, or to come up with something that sort of develops it. And so they came out with that, and they will push WotC in turn. So that's good.
I think there's space. It's important to show that a 5th edition is not a monolith. It has ideas, put forth a lot of great ideas, but there are things that can be iterated on, and it's important that we give those things a chance, right?
100%.
And my personal feeling is 5th edition and the Paizo products aren't good for story-oriented mechanics and don't really have a background in that mechanically.
100%.
But you look at, say, 13th Age and Cypher System, where it's very clear and codified in the rule that there are mechanics that are narrative and story oriented in order to help it be a story game. Whereas my philosophy with 5th edition has always been the game is what is played at the table and the story is what is told afterwards. Meaning this is very clearly a game, and however it goes, we'll tell a story about how it went down afterwards. To the point where that philosophy was endorsed by Mike Mearls and Chris Perkins. They were like, you got it. But then I played other game systems where the story is very clearly a part of the game, and they've introduced mechanics, a lot of it influenced by White Wolf's products in the 90s, influenced, not ported over into systems such as 13th Age, a little bit in Shadows of the Demon Lord, and a lot in Cypher System, where it's like, all right, let's make a system where story itself is king, and we can have a rule set divorced from genre, and you can skin this however you like, to the point where I've run detective stories in Cypher System. I've run space opera in Cypher System.
And Fate is along this too. I mean, like Fate Core is along the same kind of lines, right? Where you're able to use that in multiple different genres and subgenres. I mean, I don't know a lot about it, but yeah.
With Cypher, it's a bit more crunchy though,
Okay.
and you still feel like you're playing a game. Not to disrespect Fate at all, but it's like, it feels a little right. I think Matt Colville termed it. He goes, some of these companies really get fluff and crunch, like that perfect texture and mixture of fluff and crunch.
It's my favorite kind of snack.
I know, right?
Fluffy,
Copyright
crunchy.
Matt Colville. He'll throw a Kickstarter, raise $3 million.
Fluffy,
Sorry.
crunchy. I know that's true. I gotta think of. Oh, go ahead, Dave. Sorry, Dave.
That would be that's the system. I want to name my system that.
Fluffer
Fluff and
crunchy. Crunchy fluff. First edition. What do you got, Dave?
I was just going to say that I think D&D 5e is a story-driven system as well. I mean, look at how rule light it is compared to the other systems. But then again, and because the Dungeon Master's Guide and all these other core rule books, they do talk about role playing. So I think it also falls back on the Dungeon Master as well to get out of that. Let's just kick in the door and roll initiative for every single encounter. I think it falls back on the DM as well to introduce more story. But then again, does the DM want to run that type of game? So, but I think, especially with the way that the encounters are now set up in 2.0, whether it's going to be a tactical type of encounter or exploration or social, I think 2.0, well, Pathfinder 2.0 and D&D do have a lot of mechanics for story-driven elements as well. Maybe not as many games out there, maybe like a 13th Age or something like that. But I still think that I kind of disagree with you guys on saying that D&D and Pathfinder.
Well, here's my question then. I'm curious though.
Mm-hmm.
Does a lack of rules make it story-driven, and if so, how and why?
Right. So what I was gonna say was I think Grant's contention is sort of correct in the sense that you said that, for example, okay, A lot of systems I know that could be considered more story driven. Generally, the advice and the instruction for how a DM should sort of tell the story at the table and run the game are wrapped up into the same book, right?
Yeah,
They
like
are
a core book,
those details are given at the same time because they are essentially, they are part of each other. However, for Dungeons and Dragons, you have the rules and then you have the Dungeon Master's Guide. You can run the rules without the Dungeon Master's Guide, right? The Dungeon Master Guide is just to sort of give you ideas about how to sort of improve that.
I would agree with you on that for sure.
Well, it's a list of magic item tables, villain generation tables, town generation tables. There's like, I think 2 paragraphs that are what I'd call rule centric. And they're good. A lot of them are based around milestones. They have good advice on tapping into the type of players you'll play with and taking that into consideration for a campaign, as well as how to build your own monsters and things like that.
Yeah.
Sort of chapter by chapter.
I also, just a small aside, I know it's Grant's thing, and with every bit of respect, I have never actually agreed with that statement that about the story being what you tell away from the table. Like, it's just I don't know why it just
I agree.
It just never worked for me, right? Like, maybe I don't, there's
For D&D, I absolutely don't feel the story's what happens at the table. I feel you are playing a game with rules.
Right.
And stories what you tell afterwards.
Right. It's just, I don't know. There's just something about the haptics of that I don't necessarily agree with. But again, maybe I'm incorrect in that.
No, I mean,
it's all opinion.
Yeah, I mean, of course.
It's all opinion
They were like,
based.
that made a lot of sense, but it's one of those things where it's also the style that I run. We're very much playing a game at the table. That doesn't mean there's no narrative elements or descriptive. We're using 3-act structure. We have dialogue. We have characters. We have all these elements of story. And a lot of the reason for that is it's almost like, if you could think of it this way, the game is when we're putting the cake in the oven, and then afterwards the cake has been served and consumed and experienced.
Let me play off that, though, if I can. See, because I agree with Dave and Askren about this. I would put it a little bit differently in that I think, let us use this as an example. I can't believe I'm going to use this example because I don't drink, but you drink a particular drink of your choice, okay? A Manhattan, a martini, something like that. It tastes good when you're drinking it.
As a martini guy.
Or, I mean, as I've been told, since I don't drink, but, let's say, just use that as an example. What you get afterwards is the aftertaste, right? It's the memory. It's the thing that you remember about it. It is something which stays with you. These are the stories that you then tell afterwards. But I think if I were playing a game that was just a game, I have literally 300 board games down in my basement that would do better at this, I think, than tabletop role-playing does.
Why would the board games do better?
Because I think they feel to me much more when I'm playing them as if I'm in a game-oriented environment. And maybe it has to do with the fact that on my tabletop setups, obviously we use Roll20, many of us do if we're doing online stuff. But, I mean, I'm very theater of the mind. I don't go for heavy miniature stuff. So, yes, there's dice rolling and stuff like that. And yes, there are rules being applied. But I think of it much less as something where you're constantly interacting in a tactile way with miniatures that you're moving around a board. In fact, I'd argue that one of the things with 4E was the fact that it was going back to the roots, of course, Chainmail, which was itself a miniatures game, etc.
Of course it was.
And it felt more like that. But that is not of interest to me.
But
and
that
even
was
when
the
I was
design of the game, though.
No, I know that. But even when I was back playing first edition, that wasn't what I enjoyed. My memory of playing games when I was in 5th grade, 6th grade and playing Keep on the Borderlands at recess, right? And I had no idea what I was doing. We weren't playing with a board or we did have dice. We didn't have, we barely had character sheets. And what it was for me was the
caps and 2-liter caps. That's what you
yeah, pretty much, right? And it was so you didn't have right exactly because we didn't have any money either. So it was pretty much all that. So it was just a matter for me of sort of the imaginative space in which I was occupying my time. And honestly, if I look at the game systems that I'm drawn to now and the events that I'm drawn to now, Assignment Impossible is a very, it's Mission Impossible 60s spy thing, which is heavily driven by narrative. And the players, who are familiar to everybody here, are players that do a wonderful job with this. And it is a sort of back and forth sort of narrative construction. Now, I'm not saying that that is very little crunch as such, and that wouldn't be to everybody's taste. But for me personally, if I felt like I was just playing a game as a game, and I was sort of waiting for the story to pop in like later on, and I could be like, that was a good story, then I'm missing what I love about this, which is the collaborative storytelling effect. Like when they were in Adventures of Middle-earth, when they are sitting in the dungeons and they just decide, I didn't make them do this, they're like, we will all gather together as a group and tell stories of the sad stories of the death of kings, as Shakespeare says, right? We will sit around and have memories, and those memories will help us battle the shadow. That is enormously powerful to me, and I was tearing up in the moment, not waiting for later on when the story would pop in. Now, I'm telling you all this now because I do remember it later, so I'm with you on that, Grant, for sure. But during it, if I don't have a story going on at the same time, I kind of feel like I don't know what I'm doing there. I think it's got to be that too. So
yeah, I think tying right along with it though is like there are many games that have no components. There are no pieces, that you learn as children, be it charades, hide and seek, etc. And there are games, I've seen athletes have emotional responses at the end of a sporting event, which is clearly a game. However, as a spectator or even as a coach, the game itself becomes a story. And you are a participant in the story. However, I think very often once you're out of the moment and out of the game, you kind of come full circle, right? Mm-hmm. You have all the components of a story in order for it to, you complete the game in order for the story to become a whole, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yes, I agree with that. I think that's totally fair. But I would say, though, I don't know that I'd agree with you about the athlete point, because in their mind, there is a narrative that they've constructed. And when you see athletes tear up, they are largely doing this. A guy hits a home run to win the World Series. I'll give you a good example. I'm a Red Sox fan. I'm wearing the hat. 2004, they win the World Series after the greatest comeback in the history of professional sports, down 3-0, blah, 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 blah. Doesn't matter. Anyway, they win. And what they're playing as the people, as they're running around the bases, and these players are all combination crying and joy. This was 86 years of frustration. And in New England, where the winters are real goddamn cold and there was nothing else to do except think to the next summer when maybe this year the Red Sox will do it. People were born after 1918 and died before 2004, never having seen their team accomplish what it was they had really wanted to accomplish. When they're running around the bases and they're finishing up after having won these games, and actually there is an absolute narrative, I think, in their mind of not just how they have become a part of this greater story, but
after
themselves.
The games, right?
Yeah, but no, even when they are doing it, though, I think that sort of tied them down for a while too. They were like,
when they're running around the bases, they're thinking as 20 years ago, as they were little kids playing out in the front yard, they were envisioning that moment.
Well, I've watched the documentaries on that, the 2004, and I'm familiar with a lot of the athletes that participated. And there's a story, but also while you're in the middle of doing it, speaking as I was a semi-professional athlete in two different sports. Okay. I competed in the X Games in 1996, and I was an MMA fighter with a record of 15-3. When you're in the moment, you're kind of in the moment, right? You don't necessarily see everything from the outside. You are simply in the trenches doing your job, and you're not necessarily basking in the grandeur of the moment, and you're very much focused on your job. And there have been times where you lose, you didn't realize that you had 10 seconds to go. You didn't know how much time was left. You didn't see the camera cut and, go on the shot clock running out, or you didn't see the millimeters of an inch that you missed the goalpost from. You simply hit your best shot. Same with the home run. It's like, look, he pitched and I swung. That's what I did. So it's a lot easier to put it into context after the facts, and we can kind of juxtapose events before and after.
Yeah, that's fair.
What I'm kind of getting at is you have all the components of story, which then kind of amplifies in the retelling and the memory afterwards, and particularly with role-playing games. And no, I'm in agreement. I wouldn't play these games if there wasn't story and emotional response. But I'm kind of with D&D in particular, and when I say that, I mean Vanilla 5e. Mm-hmm. A game is what I play at the table, but afterwards, I have stories that I tell for the rest of my lives, and Gen Con's a good example. You run into people, and the real emotional connection that you have with these people are memories that you've made at a table.
That's interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I buy that. I mean, that's interesting. I was thinking, but it's funny, I'm thinking about that. I was obviously nowhere near the level that you're talking about, but I was a good tennis player, and I've played at the USTA Tennis Center where I watched a lot, and you can play on those courts. And I've played on the courts where I watched people, Novak Djokovic in his early days, trying to become like all that, and looking up and seeing that I'm playing on court 11. That has an effect on me because because my dad was the one who taught me tennis. And I remember very clearly the feeling I had of watching tennis with him when I was, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. I started playing basically when I was 7. And I remember the experience of what it was like going to see things after he had passed away. So for me, that was definitely personal context, which not everyone's going to have. But when I hit a couple forehands and I, ended up playing in this league, and I was pretty good in a couple of the leagues that I played in, and I won a particular match, you're right that in the moment, if I was spending every moment going, as I hit this forehand, it's like some theme out of The Natural. Like, I mean, obviously that's not, you got to focus on what you're doing. But in the immediacy of it, there were moments which were very powerful to me, I think, in a story-driven way. I mean, maybe it's because I'm a writer, so I spend all my time doing this anyway, but I think I was constructing a narrative in my head even at the time that I was doing it. But I think your overall point, though, is quite right, that there is sometimes a disconnect or a difference between the story you tell afterwards and the story you tell before, and there's no question that it gets amplified more in the process of doing that. So I totally agree on that score.
And for Dungeon Masters, just real quick, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure, no, that's fine.
For Dungeon Masters, you 100% need to pay attention to all of this and make notes, because if you're not going into the game, particularly a role-playing game, with story in mind, it may fall apart on you, it may not fall apart on you, it depends. You will have a very different type of game. And Eric and a few other people in chat, they'd been playing some Cypher System one-shots with me, which literally I set up as 3-act structure stories with, here's the introduction, here's the conflict, here's the resolution, here's literally beats from any book you can read on putting together action movies. This will happen, then this will happen, then this will happen. We'll connect it in the scenes. So story is hugely important when preparing for your games.
Yeah, I absolutely agree on that score. Let me ask one quick thing, too. Let me just follow up with this for you guys as well. We don't spend a lot of time on this, but I just wanted to ask, this new announced Twitch tags system has gotten a lot of attention, I know, on the TTRPG Discord and other places that we've been chatting about, which is basically what, for those of you who don't know what this is, they're getting rid of communities, they're replacing it with tags, and they are going to be adding a category called just tabletop role-playing. So basically TTRPG as its own category, as opposed to having it all be under either tabletop, which is kind of a big catch-all, or D&D. And the discussion that some people were having was, well, do we keep streaming under D&D because that's where all the eyes go? Or do we all sort of like live out the meaning of our creed, and do we go and do tabletop and say this is what we're streaming when we're not streaming D&D, and basically create the community that we seek? So I'm curious what you folks think about that. We don't need to spend a lot of time, but I'm just curious.
So here's the main problem with this. Twitch is taking an idea that on its face is a great idea, and that idea is rolling the entire tabletop role-playing genre on Twitch into one category,
right?
Because that's sort of the bet. A divided community, like divided sub-communities, they're never a good thing. They don't help discovery. They're not really they end up being insular. They don't help anyone. The problem is Paizo and Roll20, as well as I think Fantasy Grounds even, fought real hard very recently to get their own categories on Twitch. Pathfinder got one literally just the other week. Roll20's had one for a while that no one but them uses. And I think Fantasy Grounds has their own category that no one uses. And D&D is the catch-all because it's the biggest one. You don't really have a choice. The problem is Twitch isn't going to remove the D&D category, and even if they did, they tried to, Wizards would raise a huge stink. And Paizo and Roll20 and stuff, they're not going to give up their own categories that they worked hard to get. So the fact that we have a bunch of those, D&D, Pathfinder, Fantasy Grounds, Roll20, and then tabletop RPGs is just kind of the worst outcome.
I see. Yeah, I can see that. What do you
Like it just doesn't solve any problems, is my contention.
Yeah,
I was actually opposed to this when it first started happening years ago when Roll20 broke off. I'm like, well, the tabletop community is a niche community. It's small in the first place, but now everybody wants to break off and have their own communities. It's just basically making the main community become smaller and smaller and smaller. So I was kind of opposed to that in the first place. But I mean, it is what it is. I am just a user. I don't make any of the decisions.
Right. Yeah.
So, but I was opposed to it, and I'm kind of happy seeing that it all falls back under one umbrella. But is it really going to also? I mean, it's just going to stay the same anyway, in my opinion.
yeah.
Probably. I'd say with me, it's like I don't get enough viewers to worry about it. No.
Yeah.
I'm in that like 40 to 65 range on my own channels, and then it's like, yeah. I'm too lazy to change anything, anyways. I mean, I think my stream titles.
Here's the thing: it's not about. To me, it's not about the individual viewers of the streams. It's kind of about the health of the community as a whole. And Twitch has had a problem with communities. Creative. I don't know if any of you guys have ever streamed with Creative.
Sure
had worst problem with discovery in Creative, and that was because for the longest time Creative was just kind of its own side thing, and there was like music and cooking and crafting and all this
Perler
stuff.
beads.
Yeah,
but don't sleep on Perler beads, but it is not exactly.
No. I 100% like the fact that they are making communities for different types of crafts. There are people more educated than I am about how to do these things for their individual hobbies. The tabletop games, however, I think what we're ending up with is just an added category that most likely maybe 10% of the community is going to use, and it's just not going to solve anything. And
here's a question.
And because of that, I think it's kind of not worth discussing because who cares, right?
Okay.
Well, no. Here's my question then. So, is Twitch's motivation then is to sift out that 10% for better targeted advertising?
No. So Twitch.
But that 10% doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things.
Right. So
Well,
here's
it's 10%. 10%
No.
of 1 million is 1 million.
No. That's not how it works, right? So think of it this way. If you go into the Dungeons and Dragons category right now, let's say on its best night, so on a Thursday, you have Critical Role doing about 35,000 viewers, and then you have.
But that's it. Nobody's in the directory unless they're there, or it.
No, well, that's not true. That's not true.
Well, there are, but I'm talking about those types of numbers, Astron.
No, but that's what I said. You could take it on any night, but I'm saying take it on what's most likely the best night for tabletop games on Twitch. Right? You have Critical Role, and then you have a bunch of other streams doing their thing. The Twitch real as far as I'm aware, for a long time wanted to do right by the tabletop community. This was about a year ago at this point, but I and a bunch of other people were in our own Curse channel. They invited us all in back when they actually were doing a monthly tabletop spotlight on the front page. Like, they were really putting effort into into expanding the reach of tabletop games. Twitch as a company decided that there wasn't as much money there as there was in branded content and other things, and so they stopped doing all that. But they clearly want to do something. They clearly want to help out the tabletop community while they're expanding all the other communities, and that means, okay, well, they want a generic community. They don't just want to play Dungeons and Dragons. The problem is there's no incentive for people to leave the Dungeons and Dragons tag, right? It's not about targeted ads or anything. It's you need a place. People need an incentive to gather. Right now, if everyone's using the tag Dungeons and Dragons, not because they're playing D&D, but because that's where all of the viewers are, right? Then they're just going to keep using it. There's no incentive for them to go use tabletop role-playing games if no one's browsing that tag.
Well, no one's pretty empirical, right? And totalitarian. Say there's 100 channels. How many would you need to be the top ranked tabletop, the number one listed? Say there's 100 people.
What do you mean?
Go off the Hasbro CEO's quotes of how many people are viewing on Twitch as a total,
right?
From the last month's CNBC report. So that's sort of where I'm looking at my overall numbers, like the grand scheme. He's a pretty reputable source. So, but
I don't understand the question.
No, so the question is, so something that helps you get discovered on Twitch is where your channel ranks in a category, correct? If you are higher up, as people click on a category and scroll.
Yeah.
So if there's a new category, is it less competitive and therefore you have more of an
in theory, but the problem is you have to drive viewers to that category to discover the streams, and that means there has to be an incentive for them to go there. If they look down the directories and they see tabletop role-playing games has 10 streams in it, right? Sure, they could go there and then have 10 people to choose from, and then you might have, if you are one of those 10 streams, in theory, your odds of being seen by a new viewer are higher. But if they're scrolling down the categories and see Dungeons and Dragons has 100 people streaming to it, they're more likely statistically to go there.
Especially with the front page sort of attention. I mean, like let's be clear too. A lot of this comes down to whether or not we think there's going to be transferability from people that like, for example, Critical Role going elsewhere, right? And this is one of the things that is often debated. Are people who watch what is right now the big, 800-pound gorilla in the room, which is what Critical Role is, where sometimes, I mean, the numbers I think are actually sometimes closer to 50 and 60,000 people at a time. Are those people going to after they're done with Critical?
Do they view other streamers?
Do they go to other D&D streamers? Do they go to other D&D things, or will they stretch outside? Yeah, I mean, and some of them might, but the question is, would they go outside? Because the answer is, let me just finish up one thing. So if the Critical, this is the way that this would handle, right? Let's say the Geek and Sundry said, you know what? We are not going to do this anymore, be in the Dungeons & Dragons category, because we are doing Tal'Dorei. So we are now the Tal'Dorei system, or we are the Matt Mercer subcategory, or like whatever it is, right? That amount of people would then create a number of people who, one, wanted to pick up on some of those sweet viewer numbers, but two, who wanted to be able to be connected into a category that had this much attention being paid to it, so that you would have the cascading effect. Because you guys know the drill. People go watch it and then they're like, okay, I don't like something going on, I want to go watch something else, or I really like this, is there anything else like this? I'll catch the VOD of this later, but I want to see others like this right now. And then they will jump to other places. So in a way, it's sort of like in academia, which I know very well, everything in America anyway in the collegiate system is derived by what Harvard, Yale, and Princeton does. If Harvard, Yale, and Princeton tomorrow said we are no longer going to charge tuition, I promise you that within a year, 50%, and I'm not being hyperbolic, 50% of the higher education market would have gone the exact same route, because they would go directly in the path of what the Ivy Leagues do, because everybody follows the Ivy Leagues all the way down. So in this situation, if Critical Role decided they were going to go at another spot, that would affect everything. So in a way, if Critical Role, which is building their own channel, now, and doing their own like separate things, if they start doing stuff where they have some of their players doing individual systems and they don't stream under D&D, but they stream under tabletop, like if they do Shadowrun is not D&D. If they stream under Shadowrun and, someone like Marisha Ray or something decides that she's going to do her own Shadowrun campaign, and puts that under tabletop, that will be a big driver of people.
So to answer two questions, statistically, one, while the small percentage of people who show out for Critical Role who trickle into other streams, they tend to be people who are already actively using Twitch, but the grand majority of the viewers don't.
Right.
They don't go into other streams. They might go into other games, but not many other D&D streamers. That just statistically, because most of them only tune into Twitch for Thursday night.
Yep.
But
they wait for the "We've Gone Online" email, and then they just look and
that's it. Yeah.
The question, the other question you asked was, for example, so I don't know if the new categories are out, but when I know Geek and Sundry streamed a game last night. I think they did it in the Dungeons and Dragons category.
Yeah, the new categories are September, so these haven't rolled out yet.
Fair enough, then. Yeah. So I think, and also here's an important thing to remember: what individual streamers do is usually very different than what brands do, because brands kind of have a brand, like they sort of work, they are kind of held to that. Like, for example, Roll20 has to stream in the Roll20 category because of brand stuff. like they kind of have to force themselves. They're not like no one's holding a gun to their head, but they force themselves to, even though no one else is streaming in that community, right? And that's not to knock Roll20. It's just that like they just eat, like they couldn't make the choice to do otherwise because it would be off brand.
Their numbers are pretty good though, I would say.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like,
it's like 6,000.
They do fine. But I'm saying like they kind of have that community, and the community is of no fit. I don't think, right? The Roll20 tag, I don't think it accomplishes anything.
Give me just one sec, guys. I think we may be back on. Hold on a second. We went down for just a second. Check. Give me one sec. Let's just make sure. Back up. It should be.
You look good over here. I haven't seen the stream go out.
I'm spinning
there it goes.
Now.
Yeah. It did not disconnect. So give me a second. All right, hang on a second. I really don't want to. Okay, you know what? I will stop the stream, but I still got the recording going. So hold on, bear with us.
Usually if it's not reconnecting, you just stop and restart it.
Yeah.
2000 network error. Y2K all over again.
Seriously.
Okay, that should be back.
There's back.
Also, I do kind of have to bounce. I have dinner with my sister.
Okay, that's fine. Oh, we that was conversation was so interesting that we kind of got. That's fine though. All right, we're back. Good. Sorry about that, everybody. I don't know what happened there. Okay, cool. So we are back. So we do need to kind of move off of the topic, as interesting as it's been, because we got to zip through the last bits of this. So, but that was I mean. The thing that I'll say is we will see how this all plays out, but what Ghost said is not a bad idea either, which is just to say, before we went down, which is just to say, having a TTRPG channel with sub-channels under it, like D&D and Pathfinder. Now, I don't know whether WotC would go for that. I don't know whether WotC would be like, wait, what? We're not if they don't want to be put at the same sort of equivalency level.
It's not whether Wizards would like it, it's whether Twitch would do that to Wizards.
Yeah, whether they would do that's a good point. So, but anyway, but interesting. More to be discussed at a later point, but we have to get moving on here. So, quickly, product review stuff. And I want to bring up one, and then if you guys have something you want to talk about regarding a product, I want to mention this. This will be fast because I already mentioned it before I actually got it, but now I have it. I picked up at Gen Con Into the Borderlands, which is by Goodman Games. It is a 5e conversion of B1 and B2, so In Search of the Unknown and Keep in the Borderlands. And it's even got the original cover that's on it, the original cover picture. So this was an insta-buy for me because that was the first module I ever played was Keep on the Borderlands, and I was like, I will 1000% get this. So they knew that, and I think they had a lot of us play in that same kind of mix. But I was just like, it was $50, so I was like, okay, I'll deal with it. And I have to say, they did a very good job on portions of this. They did a good job, I think, first of all, on the overall feel of the book. They have essays in here about the effect of Keeping the Borderlands, stuff like that. And the 5e conversion itself, I think, is pretty good. What I don't think they needed to do was to essentially pad the page content by reprinting the original Keep on the Borderlands, and here's why. The people that would want to spend $50 on something like this already have that module, right? Like, they already have that adventure. It's not like there's one of these that is left in the world. They already have that. So reprinting it in what is basically, people are getting this because they want a 5e conversion, so they can really up the nostalgia factor to 11, but there's no real reason to do that, it seems to me, if you're also going to be adding this kind of cost, level to it. But that said, I still got it. I still am really happy. I had a chance reading through some of it. It was really neat, and I felt all the nostalgia feels. But the other thing is, I'd love to see a digital version of this, because if I am going to play this with people online, I am not going to scan maps and stuff like that.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I know. I know, but just so many. Oh man, so cool. Anyway, I really liked it. It was cool. I don't think it needed to be as big as it was, but having said that, they got me. So Into the Borderlands, good stuff. What do you guys got? Dave and Askren, because I know you guys got to go quickly. Dave, you got anything product-wise?
Yeah, the Borderlands book was a disappointment to me, Arv. It was $60 at my game store. Okay. But I buy books because I want them in color, and that game, well, that book is just on like this thick cardstock paper, and a lot of the pages had rough ends on it. And for $60, I thought that it just wasn't up to a $60 product. That's just my opinion. When I buy a book, I like to look through a book, and I like to see color pictures, and I know it's the nostalgia part of it. I already own those books, so that's why I didn't buy it. Plus, of the $60 was a little bit too much for the quality.
60 would definitely be too much. As I said, I thought 50 was definitely pushing it a bit, also, given the size of it. But yeah, I'm with you.
I have a couple of new products this month. I've got the Pathfinder playtest stuff. I've really enjoyed what I've read so far. I think that Pathfinder playtest is if you're looking for just pure mechanics, I think it's a solid medium between a 3.5 and a 5e for complexity. It has a double-sided two-pack flip mat. It has a new Doomsday Dawn adventure. I like what I've read so far with it. I haven't had a chance to digest every single thing in the book. I've, especially with moving and everything, I've read as much as I can. But I like Pathfinder 2, and that's going to be one of the games that I support. I want something with a little bit more structure for rules. So that's why I'm kind of giving this a try. So yeah, Pathfinder playtest, pretty good so far.
Cool stuff. Yeah, a lot of buzz at Gen Con about the new Pathfinder stuff coming up. Ashken, what do you got?
I also got a Pathfinder playtest. I got a chance to play it there, and because I'm playing Pathfinder in my home game, first of all, I want to say I really like the book. I was reticent at first because it's not, the artwork in it isn't done. It's still kind of very.
It's a lot of old regurgitated art too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to look for examples, but there isn't a whole lot of art in general. There's a lot of old module art. I assume that's all placeholder because this is very much an in-play book. And my assumption is by the time my current Pathfinder campaign is done, the real one will be out, and I will just get that. The only thing that I really got at Gen Con that was I didn't really buy much in the way of games. I did get this, which was a gift, is a Wayne Reynolds art book. I already have one, but he happened to be there, and one of the people at Paizo gave me it as a gift, so I have a little mummy goblin in mine.
Oh, nice.
That's it. That's all I got from Gen Con. I'm really, really looking forward to actually getting my hands on this. The action economy stuff is basically what I'm super interested in. Generic actions are such a fucking revelation for D20 based, or D&D style systems.
Nice.
It's the same thing as other D20 games. It just has a different name to it now and nice little symbols. But I just like that you get that, like, that they're generic. They're not they're generic, and you can use them for anything. That is, to me, that's far and away. Yeah, if you want to take 3 run actions, take 3 run actions.
Yeah.
Go for it. If you want to attack 3 times, go for it. But you're going to have penalties. I love it too. So
yeah,
it's the same, but it's different in ways, and that's what I really like about it as well.
Cool stuff. Grant, you got anything that you want to talk about?
Yes.
Just hold up your shirt. Kobold, everything by Kobold.
No, this is the product that I invested in. And what this is a black cube, and you open the black cube and it fills up roughly like a 6-foot table of some sort. I'm just going to open it part way and hold it up, and then inside are many wondrous treasures and props. There are 4 full color art book quality rule books. There are props like this really cool Testament of Suns, which is, I mean, if your parents found this and you were playing a role-playing game with like some candles lit, you place these tarot-like cards in it, which have narrative impacts on the game. And all of this leads to, which have, amazing, brilliant artwork, and each game has a narrative consequence. It's Invisible Sun, and it is a deluxe game by Monte Cook Games. And there is an option to play in what's called the Directed Campaign, where Monte Cook Games will mail your players props, such as if they belong to a secret society.
That is such a Monte Cook thing to do. I was on several panels with Shanna Germain this weekend, and she was on a panel. I'm sorry to interrupt. Just want to say briefly, she was on a panel with me. We were doing this thing about making something different but not too different, and I was kind of like also known as the panel for Monte Cook. Like, I mean, and except for the not part, like, of course it's my. And she was cracking up. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, that's so Monte Cook. Yeah, and full disclosure, like Sean is my biggest RPG crush. You get all these really artsy envelopes that are filled with props and handouts, very artistically done, be it flyers for nightclubs they'll find in game. And really what it is, we were talking about story and narrative. This is a game where it is all about story. And they tell you emphatically in the Game Master section, they say, all right, the Game Master section, the Monty Cook in all capital letters says, stop. You have an instinct to skip this section because you've run lots of role-playing games. And I would not expect you to be reading this book if you had not. I need you to read this section because running this game is different than running Numenera. It's different than running Cypher System. It's different than running Dungeons and Dragons. And I produce products for all these lines professionally for a very long time. So slow down, sit a while, and let's talk about how at the start of a game, your characters, your players are going to choose character arcs that they're going to pursue. And there will be group arcs and story arcs, and it will be entirely player driven. And as a product, it's top of the line. The only unfortunate thing is, that we're relying on international shipping for everyone to get their copy. But as a play experience, and I've gone through the core books 2.5 times now, it's a lot. There's about 400 pages of book and 1,200 pages of content. I'm just reading night and day, getting in. There's just so much to digest. So,
and you get a new one of these every month. You get a new props every month mailed to you.
So I get a package of props and story and a forum to where Monty Cook and I can consult on my campaign. Shauna and Bruce and Sean and Darcy, etc., all will consult with you on your campaign.
Wait, you or anybody who does this? Like anybody?
Anyone who signs up for the directed campaign, which was an option anyone could purchase.
Wow. How expensive is that?
So as a game, the cube itself costs about $200. And it's like, wait a second, that's an expensive buy-in. Yes, as are most RPGs, if you buy all the core books and a pack of dice and an adventure, it's roughly the same, but this is all inclusive. It's like, you're going to have to go all in for the full experience. And it's another $200 for the directed campaign. And they will support you for a year from the time you choose to activate it. You have 1 year to activate it from the time you purchase it.
Wow.
And
interesting.
it's a very different play experience. I'd love to run it for you sometime and other members here, Dave or Askren. I'm putting together one-shot versions just to get the flavor, to help people in the industry get opinions on it, because it is going to be kind of a hard deluxe item to get. But my mission is as many people get an opportunity to play as want to experience it.
My thing is I kind of want to just find out what Grant's price is so I can bribe him to either look at his textbooks or he can tutor me after school so I can run it. Like
I was gonna say,
as long as that price is
videos.
As long as that price is cheaper than the actual box itself, I think we'll be good.
It will be. And I am doing a massive I'm trying to create what I would call the digital sensory experience that
I saw that.
Yeah, so I'm working on Roll20 sheets. I'm working on a tool assist to help people play who are separated by distances. And this is all that I'm doing on my own. Disclaimer, I'm not being paid or promoted by Monty Cook to do those things.
Not yet.
Not yet. There's other things that they use me as a consultant for, but Invisible Sun's kind of my passion thing. It's what I'm injecting in my veins to keep my blood running once I get tired of running against the giants, right? So it's like, how many giants must die?
Wow, that's neat. That's really cool. I am actually going to look more. I saw you tweeting about that, but I hadn't had a chance to look at it myself. I will have to check out more of that. That's cool. And yes, I'm always interested to try that out. I have a feeling people would be interested to watch that being played. I play a little bit of a system called Emberwind, which I liked a lot, that my friend John, who's in a campaign of mine, played, and I was enjoying that too. So some of these new things that I get a chance to play are always neat. But I know that Dave and Askren have got to rise up on out of here in just a minute. Grant, can you stick around for a minute or two to ask and answer some questions from chat? Okay, so
100%.
I will allow Askren and Dave to say what they need to say before they head on out of here. Dave, I guess we could start with you. Where do you want the people to find all of your awesome content next?
I just want to say nice meeting you, Grant, and thanks for coming on to the show with us. And it was nice to meet you. So, and if you ever decide to do that one shot, give me a shout, and I'd like to try it out.
I'd love for you to play.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So you can get a hold of me many different outlets. Now that I've hired a social media person, so getting out there now more in the Tweeter universe and Facebook and all that good stuff. So you can find me at digitaldungeonmaster.com. You can also find me on twitch.tv/digitaldm, where I'm doing pretty much anywhere between 5 and 6 streams a week. Getting into painting miniatures now. I've been painting a bunch of miniatures live on stream, so you can see me hack up beautiful miniature, well, not miniatures, I'm doing like terrain, barrels, crates, fences, stuff like that. Run 2 games. I run a 50 Fathoms game on Friday nights, every other Friday, and a Starfinder against the Aeon Throne, but that's not live yet because I don't want to get in trouble because it's not out officially. So other than that, follow me on all the other social media outlets, and thanks for having me again, and we'll see you next month, Arv.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave. Eric is asking, you're in charge of the next 5e product. What is it? Why? So,
you guys already know what the next 5e products are. We've got the awesome Ravnica Magic the Gathering setting come out.
Mm-hmm.
Dark Sun.
Crickets. Oh,
I
sorry.
was just waiting. Eberron, give it to me. All the lightning rails.
I was hoping for Dark Sun or Nentervale or Mystara or something like that.
Is better.
Hey, it was a great strategical financial move on their part because they're trying to entice in the hordes of Magic the Gathering players, which out-trump D&D players by tenfold probably. So good move on their part. And then, of course, you guys know about Dragon Heist and Undermountain coming out. So there's nothing else that's coming out in the future, I don't think. Well, I'm sure there'll be some more stuff coming
No
out.
more products.
Can we talk about it?
No. We won D&D. Thank you.
Well, finally, they won. That's awesome. All right,
and
Dave.
good to see Eric, too. We got to get Eric back on here, too, again.
Yes, definitely. We will have, and actually, I think we had Eric maybe as our first ever guest star. So we'll come back. Do you guys realize that next year is our year anniversary of doing this show? We've been doing it for a year as of next year, which is next month, which is hard to believe.
That's bonerlicious. If we could only have a goddamn banner.
I know it. You want it to be bannerlicious. I know it. All right, man. Have a good one, Dave. Thank you very much. I will catch you down the line.
Askren, see you later, buddy. Grant, thanks again.
Friend.
Talk to you guys later. Bye.
All right, see you, Dave. Askren, you're up next as we move things around. Where will the fine folks see you next, sir?
I will be so my schedule is a little wonk today this week. Got back from Gen Con. We played some daubers. First of all, I want to say thank you for having me, man. As always a pleasure to hang out. Grant,
definitely.
Always a pleasure. Anytime we get a chance to hang out, which is getting more scarce. We gotta
play again.
Yeah, we gotta do some stuff.
Let's do a charity stream. MS. Let's get Holly Conrad on there.
Sure.
Raise money for MS. Research.
The last time I did the last all-day charity stream I did, I immediately sunk into a horrible depression and stopped streaming for like 2 months. So yes, let's do one again. No, I'm super down anytime. Grant has been a friend of mine for a long time now, and anytime we get a chance to get together, ridiculous and great things happen, and it's a ton of fun. So
quick confirmation: will you be at GexCon?
I maybe. I mean,
if you're in the All-Star game. I'm sorry to.
Sure, yeah, I'll go. I have. Here's the thing. I have a shirt for Tia, so I guess I have to go. She wanted me to buy her a Death Save shirt, so now I gotta get her the shirt that I bought. But yeah, so you can find me over. Hi, my name is Askren. I am the host and dungeon master over on the Twitch.tv channel Exploding Dice, where we have live Dungeons and Dragons and other things throughout the week. A whole bunch of campaigns. The Daubers, our whimsical fantasy homebrew Dungeons and Dragons campaign. Razor Coast, our all-female pirate Dungeons and Dragons adventure. Mouse Guard is coming back pretty soon.
Nice.
And more stuff coming very, very soon. I'm working on some new projects. You guys come over, say hi. I've been playing in between Dungeons and Dragons sessions. I've been playing a lot of Monster Hunter recently. So if you have Monster Hunter World, come play it with us, as well as Sea of Thieves, and World of Warcraft is kicking off on the 13th. So we're going to be playing a lot of that too. So the ride never stops. And that's pretty much it for me. I love hanging out and talking Dungeon Master stuff, and I will see you guys next month. Follow me on Twitter over at Askren. That's it. That's all I got.
Sounds good. Thanks, dude. Good seeing you face to face last week.
Yeah.
And I will,
as always, a pleasure to hang out with all you, everyone in chat. Thank you guys for hanging out, and I will see you next month.
Awesome, man. See you next month.
Peace.
See you, Esrin. Bye-bye. All right. And that brings us back up to Grant. So now, guys, you're going to get a chance to ask some questions. If you want to ask about the finer details of Grant's MMA career, if you want to talk
link
more
to that YouTube video.
how he was screwed by Tony Hawk, doing all the X Games stuff back in the day and all that. It's funny. You're the second person I know who did stuff like that. I have who's a big D&D guy, a big role playing guy. I have a friend, Optic Nerve Productions, who was like a professional skateboarder. Like that was how he made his living. And it's just one of those things that later on I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Like, it's really cool and not something I would have thought of as being kind of, as a sort of standard way that we think about people who do the role-playing stuff, but that's changed so much. So anyway, I think that's neat. And yes, Tony Hawk was definitely epic back in the day. I also played the Tony Hawk video game because that's what I'm all about. Anyway, if you have questions for either Grant or myself, the way you do it is you type in all caps question : and then whatever question is you'd like, you can either direct it to Grant or myself or both of us. We will have time for a couple of questions, not too long, about maybe 10-15 minutes here at most, because then we all got to get out of here and get ready for what we're doing next. But definitely ask us. So, question test. Oh, okay. I was for a moment just confused. So yes, if you have questions, let us know. So I have one question, which is, we have not had a chance to talk about the digital space. We've talked about it on the show, but I'm curious about, because you do so many cons, and you were showing off the cube there, which I'm really kind of like, as I said in chat, I'm like enamored of the whole, like, I got something in the mail, like 10-year-old self thing. Like, that's really cool. But it is, of course, by nature very physical, and most of the D&D I play these days, probably a good 80% of it anyway, most of the role-playing that I do these days is done online with Roll20. In fact, that's made it possible for me, because otherwise getting everyone together and all that is just extraordinarily difficult. It's just not something I'm able to do very easily. So I'm curious about the physical versus the digital space for you. Obviously, you do a lot of online stuff with Twitch. Is there a preference? Like, if you had your druthers, would you rather be doing like the physical hold up a hand, pull tarot cards out of it type of deal, or do you like the digital kind of space for what it offers? I'm curious.
What I really like about the digital space is the ability to connect with people anywhere in the world, people from different cultures, people who speak different languages. For example, I speak Portuguese and I'm able to play with people in South America. My wife is from Mexico and Spanish was her first language.
Cool.
So I really like kind of the global aspect of the online space. However, it takes a little longer to become acclimated to what I'll call a vicarious tactile experience. It's different if you and I were sitting at Gen Con and I took the hand, the Testament of Suns, and you were able to place a card in it, and then I, as a game master, do a reading for you, which impacts your character in the game. It takes, I would say, about 6 months to get there with someone online before you can do enough, or rather, you've engineered a way to kind of create a vicarious tactile experience. For example, and I know Eric's in chat, Eric and I hang out online all the time, and but we only get to see each other in person like twice a year. However, the fact that we play so many games online, so the preference, I like in person because it's faster to kind of create that connection and sort of the intimacy that you experience in a story-centric role-playing game. It's faster to get there, and the techniques that you can use with your voice and atmosphere and ambiance, you have a lot of control of the environment. I really love that. However, I love the ability to share stories and experiences and emotions with people anywhere in the world that I get in the digital space. So I don't really have a preference. However, I will say in person is always faster and easier for me. However, I've only ever cried in a role-playing game that I played online with people. And I can tell you this, it's the only time I ever shed tears in a role-playing game. And I was not expecting to shed tears that day. But the girls I was playing with got me, and they were getting my NPC to say some really hard things. to the point where afterwards I came out online. I'm a mental health advocate. I have PTSD and agoraphobia. I came out with some of the trauma that I experienced to help raise awareness, awareness for victims of domestic violence, sexual assault. I never would have got there. I never would have been able to help those people if I wasn't playing with those individuals online.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things but it took a lot longer for us to develop that trust, where I could have developed it a lot faster in person.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think the interesting thing about the online space too is that because it's easier for people oftentimes to be consistent with it. They can, because they, as long as they have access, especially if they're not GMing the game, if they have just access to like a webcam or even in a complete pinch, like just a microphone, and they have an internet connection, somehow they can kind of log in. We had one of my guys even did this using the phone to log in from Iceland, so that he could play in this campaign. Yeah. So that makes it possible to stay more consistent. And as everybody knows, consistency is enormously important if you're doing an extended campaign. So you don't have, one session on, you miss 3 months, you come back and do 2, you don't show up for 6 months, like that. That's the kiss of death. So doing that can make that build up more easily, but you're right, it does take longer. I'd say that's probably true. Okay, so we got 2 questions. First one from Hillness. What was your favorite critical fail? Now, is this important? Critical fail as a player or as a game master, Hillness? Because I mean, as a player, oh man, I mean, I can I know exactly. Actually, I know the exact one as a GM. It was one of my favorite critical fails of all time, and it was because a guy was well known in this group that I played with. This is many years ago when I was still young and green in the ways of the force of DMing. And we were playing a module in which it was a pretty deadly module, but there was a guy who was pretty clear was not going to fit with the group. This is, in the days before Roll20, where you couldn't find, it was basically your friends on the street, and if they sucked at role-playing, there wasn't much you could do about it. So we were playing with them. It was pretty clear that he was not going to be long for this group. And he was one of these guys, he was playing a thief. So he's one of these annoying guys who does this sort of like, well, I'm a thief, which means I take everything that's not nailed down, and I'm a thief, and that's what I do, and I don't get, and you're like, ugh. So he picked up everything that's not nailed down, and the players had gotten increasingly frustrated with this. And so he picked up in this dungeon, very deadly dungeon. I had made clear, you want to make sure you're not over your head, blah, 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 in one ear and out the other for him. So he's doing all this stuff. And he picks up this trident, which is against the wall, because it looks nice and shiny and awesome. And he needs to make a saving throw. He fails the saving throw with a critical 1. Now, what he had picked up was a Trident of Yearning. For those of you who don't know what this is, a Trident of Yearning causes you to want to be immersed in the nearest body of water or liquid completely. So he grabs the trident and goes running off, and in the next room, there is a huge pool of liquid. Very, very strong corrosive acid. And that was the end of his character. He just leaps in, that's it. And he wasn't even really angry, because in a way, we were all just kind of like, we were all dying and laughing. And he was just kind of like, well, it was a good run. Like I had a good life. I took everything that wasn't nailed down, and then I had the flesh stripped from my bones because I critically failed and jumped into a. So that easily is my favorite, because it was just, he deserved that one like nobody's business. So that's my favorite one. So Hillness says is a GM. So okay, that was my favorite. I didn't do it. I just got to witness it. So that was great. What about you, Grant? You have a favorite critical fail as a GM that you did?
Always, that's always a tough one. I think for a while, and this would be more recent because I have had many critical fails. Usually I play characters with very low charisma that never shut up, because as a player, I like to get away with as much as I like to until the Dungeon Master forces a roll. And I think we're either dealing with a Lich, or we're negotiating with a Greater Medusa or something like that, in character. And I'm doing the voice, and then I have to make a deception roll, and it's like 1, and I'm turned to stone on the spot. And it's just like, finally his big mouth caught up with him. We've had to put up with this guy for 3.5 hours with his -4 charisma modifier, and he got what he deserved. I was running a couple charity games on Askren's channel, either for the D&D World Series that he and I did, where I think the Venture Maidens, watching them crit fail against Mind Flayers and getting their brains eaten was pretty cool. There was another one where they had just introduced Xanathar's Lost Notes to everything else. James Intricasso designed a bunch of crit fail tables, and there's nothing quite like watching an adult white dragon get a nat 1, fall 5 feet, die from the fall because they only had a handful of hit points left. I was like, that's the campaign, guys. But I mean, yeah, I think crit fails, it's normally more slip and slide stuff. But for me, it's always, I love when I get a good old fashioned nat 1 at a dramatic moment and I have to pay the price for all my foolish ways.
Yep. This was the moment that I knew was going to happen. Second question from Turbo Tango. Are there any mechanics or games that completely changed how you approach running games? And if so, what and how? I will answer that first. Yes. Not in terms of... I mean, some of this, I guess, I don't know if it totally changed it, but Wilderness of Mirrors has been kind of a revelation to me, because I don't think I realized how well I could basically play into a system that would use mechanics and that would use these things. And it just does everything so well. But the particular example that I want to give is not actually the narrative system. It's that you were given in Wilderness of Mirrors a certain number of mission points. You as the GM assigns a certain number of mission points based upon the plan that the group is putting together, blah, blah, blah. And then when the adventure actually begins, the clock starts in real life. And every 20 minutes, you lose one of those mission points. I always shy away from timed systems like this because I always feel like I don't want my players to make stupid decisions based on pressure, because I don't want them to come out of it being like, well, that sucked. That was like me being at work and I'd rather actually be playing a game, thanks. But that's not what this does. What this actually does is causes them to focus, because it's not so draconian. They don't need to have these mission points. It's just, it does help. And they think they really need them. So their feeling about it is that they want to move forward, and it replicates beautifully the feeling of, we are a spy group. We don't have the time when we're on a mission to be like, all right, let's spend the next 20 minutes deciding what part of the orc to hit. Like, we can't do that. If we've got stuff going on, they're coming now. Like, we need to disable the elevator now. And if our disable tool isn't working, we got to come up with something different now. We can't wait. Every time you watch one of these things, you'll see the most sort of watched object, the most seen object on the camera is the watch, right? Everyone's always checking their watch, checking the clock, checking the time. So it was a beautifully handled mechanic, which really handled things well in a way that I thought, just reading it, I was like, oh my God, this is not ever going to win. It really works well. So anyway, that system I'm very happy with of late, because it really has changed the way I approach some narrative things to the game. So what about you, Graham?
I think one for me, there's a lot of principles in a lot of role-playing games that influence me, but a mechanic that influences me is GM intrusions from Cypher System.
Okay.
And the way it works is you will ask the players, let them know you'd like to make an intrusion, typically with the "pardon my intrusion," and there's stakes. I will give you an experience point, which is a special currency in Cypher System. You can use experience to re-roll die. You can use it to get assets, things, equipment. You can use it to stratify your character. You can use it to get new abilities, to get better at things. It's a real currency that has actual value. I will give you experience and an experience point to give to any other member of the team if you let me add a little drama and a twist to the situation right now, which will complicate things and make them more difficult for you.
Interesting.
The player has the option to pay experience to prevent you from doing that. But more often than not, players lean into it and they go like, give me the experience. I can use this for so many different things.
Yep.
And they just love that opportunity to have the story go in a interesting direction. And I think that GM intrusions, one, there's two things it does. It gives experience something more than just points going up. You can use it. You never need to level up. You can just use experience to re-roll dice. You can use it to get things, or you can use it to stratify into future tiers. But also it gives you, as the game master, if you're going to make things harder on your players, the system rewards the players for you making things more difficult. And they have agency and can consent. It's kind of good because you can see where they're at emotionally. If they say no, maybe even taking it too hard on them, or they're just struggling. If they say yes, then they're accepting your ability to spice things up in this situation, and there's a physical reward for it. So I think GM intrusions coupled with the experience system from Cypher is the mechanic that changes the way I run games.
No, that's neat. I like that one. Okay, last one, because we're just about the end of the 2 hours here. Actually, this is perfect, just at 2 hours. Comes from Eric. Question, favorite convention? Not even close, Gen Con. Now, I do have a lot of conventions I go to, and some of the ones I go to are more traditional fantasy, science fiction, literature ones because I write in that space. So I'm often invited as a professional author to places like ReaderCon, CanCon in Ottawa is great. Farpoint in Baltimore, Origins. There's a lot of good ones. WorldCon and World Fantasy, of course. But Gen Con is just the bomb. Like it's just the most amazing thing ever. I got my writing start there. Everything about it I love, with the possible exception of the hotel situation in downtown Indianapolis. But as far as like the convention itself, it is amazing for me every time. So I love Gen Con. That's my answer.
My favorite convention were the friends I made along the way. No, two-part
That's very how conventional of you.
To work at Gen Con, to attend PAX Unplugged. So if I'm going to enjoy myself as a patron, I love PAX Unplugged. I know it was their first year last year, but it's the right size, right feel, right vibe, right culture. And I really just got to enjoy the convention. But as running games, networking, speaking on panels, getting better at my craft, Gen Con hands down. So to go to enjoy myself, PAX Unplugged. To work on myself, Gen Con.
Yeah, I dig it. But PAX Unplugged, I had a good time there as well last year. But that's going to be a big thing. I really, like I say, I'm going to be submitting to that panel now because I'm now thinking about that would be really awesome. We could get it. So we will see. But we have come to the end, dear viewers, of a 2-hour span. Although for those of you waiting around for D&D with viewers, that is going to be happening. So stick around for that. But to close out here with Masters of the Dungeon, Grant, this was great. Thank you very much for being willing to be on with us and doing so on relatively short notice. I've been wanting to have you on here for a while, though, so I'm glad we were able to make this happen. So thank you. And where will the fine people, where do you want to sort of promote that you will be next?
Just before that, just by way of thank you for running Esper Genesis on your channel. It's a very important game, and I think one of the better ones out there. And a number of people that I have a huge admiration for worked on the game.
Yeah.
You can find me on Twitter at WisePapaGrant. I'm on 9 different Twitch channels. The 7 days a week, I'll be on Monte Cook Games tomorrow night, playing in the Owl of Lycia Cypher System campaign. If you really want to see what I'm doing in the future, I will be on 3 channels: Eric Vulgaris' Once Upon a Game, Off the Table, and WebDM Show, doing Across the Actuality, which is 3 Invisible Sun games in 1 campaign. You walk the path of 8 suns, but the 9th sun, the Invisible Sun, represents magic, which touches us all. And that's really all you have for me. Follow my Twitter and you can find me up. And by way of apologies, I apologize to anyone in the audience and anyone on stream that I offended with my contention. I also come from an academic background where it's like, we're in college. Let's start some debates and discussion and see where it goes. So
listen, as a former debater who loved that beyond everything else, that is never a bad thing. Good discussion is always good. So that was great, and it was good to be able to get some discussion about it and to make people, definitely made me think. So we're all about thinking and positive discussion here. But thank you, Grant, very much appreciated. Chat, can we get some love for Grant Ellis and some thanks as he heads on his merry way to one of the next 6 million channels that he's going to be doing stuff on. But thanks, Grant. I appreciate it very much.
All right. Thank you so much.
Now. All right. And... okay. There Grant goes. That was awesome. Cool. All right, guys. So next up for us is going to be D&D with viewers. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back over. Actually, in just a moment, I'm going to jump back over to my scene over here where I'm going to set up for what we're going to be doing next with D&D with viewers. So give me just a second. Where's my webcam at? Okay, there we go. That's lovely. Let me go back to this and come out of this and then this, because studio mode is awesome. All right, good stuff, everybody. That was awesome. Thank you for checking out episode 11 of Masters of the Dungeon. And now, for the benefit of the video folks who are going to be watching this on YouTube, I'm going to cut this off. I'm going to stop recording, but I do not want you all to leave yet, so please don't leave, because we've got D&D with viewers coming up in just a minute. So I'm going to say goodbye for now to the people who are watching Masters of the Dungeon. Thank you all for being here, and we will see you all next month. Thanks, everybody.